Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis at the very top. Our Mishnah is discussing the requirement to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach, as it states in the Torah, Ba'erev toichlu matzos. The Mishnah states 5 different grains that are necessary to be used to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. Those grains are wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. The Mishnah goes on to say a list of things that are also either permissible to be used for the achilas matzah, and the latter part of the list of things that you cannot use for your achilas matzah. Says the Mishnah, the first of that list is demai. Ask the Gemara, demai halechazile. What is demai? Demai means doma. What is it? It's not clear whether the Am Haaretz who sold you this grain took out proper maisros from it. And therefore ask the Gemara, how can one use this for his achilas matzah? He's not able to eat the mai. It's not chazile. Answers the Gemara, kivon di iboy mafkir lenechase have oni va'oichel demai. Hashtanami chazile. Since the Chachamim were the ones who instituted the Isser of demai, midiraisa, there's no Isser to eat demai. But the Chachamim were concerned, they were choishesh, that maybe indeed the Amar did not take maisers. However, since roiv Amar is maisrin hein, the majority do take maisers, they were choishesh for the miut, whereby they said, if an ani is served demai, he can eat demai. So then we say the following: since a person could technically mafkir his nechasim, make it ownerless and become an ani, therefore he can eat the demai, therefore he's able to then go ahead and mekayim his mitzvah of matzah with demai as well. This nan, for we learn in the Mishnah, ma'achilin es ha'onim demai ve'es ha'chasanya demai. We are permitted to feed the ani demai, as well as the soldier who is being homed in private quarters outside of his own house. He's also deemed to be an ani. We will also allow him to eat demai. So again, since there's a kula in regards to demai, the Chacham said the anim can eat demai. So therefore, even a regular person who's not necessarily considered to be an ani can go ahead and eat demai as well, because since he can technically mafkir his nechasim and make himself an ani, therefore technically he would be an ani to be able to eat demai, whereby yes, he can go ahead and use that demai for his matzah. The Gemara goes on to say, Ve'omar Rav Huna Tana, he teaches a brayso Beishamai oimrim ein machin es ha'anin demai ve'es achsanya demai. Beishamai says you're not allowed to go ahead and feed the ani and achsanya demai. They are machmir. Ubeis Hillel oimrim ba'achilin, you can, and therefore we follow the opinion of Beis Hillel. The next on the list that you can use for his achilas matzah is Maaser Rishon Shenotla Trumosoi. Now here, if you read it kipshuto, it means to say that the Levi was given Maaser Rishon. The way it works is that a person who owns a field, he harvests his grain, he then threshes it, he winnows it, and then he puts it into a pile and smooths it out. It's now tevel, and now he has to take out the proper trumas and maisros. The order is as follows. He first takes out truma, or we call truma gedoyla, which is any amount midiraisa goes to the kohen. Midirabanan, it's 1/40th, 1/50th, or 1/60th. Then after he takes that out and gives it to the kohen, he then takes out what's called meiser rishon, and he gives 1/10 to the Levi. The Levi takes of that 10th what's called Trumas Meiser, and he gives 10th of that to the Kohen. The owner then goes ahead and gives a further Meiser. Some years it's Meiser Sheni, while the other years it's Meiser Oni. Al Kopanim, here it states that the Trumas Meiser says he was Meiser Rishon Shenot the Trumasoi. So the words say that the Levi took out from his Meiser Rishon what we call Trumas Meiser, and he gave it to the Kohen. Asked the Gemara, if so, Pshita, that is straightforward. Why should he not be able to then fulfill his mitzvah of matzah with that type of grain? Once the Levi took out Trumas Meiser from his Meiser, then it becomes chulin and anybody can eat it. The Gemara says, no, lo tzricha. Shehikdimu b'shiboilin v'not lo heimena truma meiser v'lo not lo heimena truma gedola. We're talking about a case, a scenario where the Levi was given his truma, his meiser rishon before the truma gedola was given to the kohen. So it was out of order. So now that the Levi has his meiser in his hands, he takes out his meiser and makes Trumas meiser by giving it to the kohen, which he's supposed to do. But now the kohen did not get the Truma Gedola. Nonetheless, we're still saying it's valid, and therefore this type of grain can be used for matzah. Rabbi Abo, like Rabbi Abo taught, Domer Rabbi Abohu, Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Meiser Rishon Shekdimu B'Sheibolim Poter Mitruma Gedola. If a Levi was given Meiser Rishon before the Truma Gedola was given to the Kohen, so all he has to do is take out his Meiser, Trumas Meiser from his Meiser to give to the Kohen, and that's satisfactory. Shenemar states, "V'hari moise mimenu Trumas Hashem Meiser min haMeiser." The pasuk says, and he shall separate from it the grain. He's talking about the Levi. He shall separate from his grain, his meiser. We call it Trumas Hashem, and it'll be called Meiser Mina Meiser, a tenth from his own tenth. He has meiser which is given to him by the owner, and now he takes out meiser to give meiser to the kohen, which is called Trumas Meiser. So on that we learn out Meiser min ha-meiser omarti lecha. I said specifically Meiser min ha-meiser, dahainu Trumas Meiser, v'lo Truma Gedola v'Trumas Meiser min ha-meiser, and not the Truma Gedola that was missed and was not given in its initial time. So here we have that even though it was not given to the Kohen, the Truma Gedola, it does not then poisel this and make it into tevel. Rather, it's a valid type of grain. Rav Papa asked Abaye, once we learn the limud, that there's an exception, that if the Levi took out the grain and was given the Meiser Rishon before the Truma Gedola was given to the Kohen, and that's okay, that makes it still acceptable so long as he takes out his Trumas Meiser, then ask Rav Papa, Elameyata afilu higdimu b'kri namili poter. Why are you saying this is only true when it comes to the shiboilis? The shiboilim means that it was reaped, right? But it wasn't threshed and it wasn't winnowed and it wasn't put into a pile. So it wasn't yet chayiv and trumas and meisers. That's when we said now before, if the Levi was given his meiser rishon, then even though it skipped the step of truma gedola, it's valid. But ask Rav Papa, why don't we say the same thing after it was put into a pile and it's now chayiv and trumas and meisers? Say that the Levi got his meiser rishon, and he can take out his trumas meiser, and that's satisfactory, even though we skipped a step of truma gedola. Abai answers back, and he says, Omalei alecha omakro. Upon you, the verse is coming to speak, and stated, Bikol matnoseichem tarimu es kol trumas Hashem. The pasuk says, from all of your gifts, talking to the Levi, you shall separate all of your Trumas Hashem. Here it emphasizes all, which means to say that there's sometimes a case where you separate not only your Trumas Meiser, but also your Truma Gedola that was skipped. And therefore, this is going on the case, indeed, of the Kri. When you already then had a pile that was chayiv in Trumas and Meisers, if the Levi was given before the Kohen was given his Truma, and he was given his Meiser Rishon, the Levi has to take true types of things. He has to take out Truma Gedola and he has to take out Trumas Meiser. Ask the Gemara, Mayra Isa. Papa continues to ask on Abaye, where do you see that the verse is specifically talking about that case where it's already a Kri, a pile, and not the case where it's in Shibolim beforehand? Says the Gemara, because Hai Idgon v'Hai Lo Idgon. Because it states in regards to Truma, you shall give to the Kohen his Truma, and it talks about it as being Dogon. The word dagon implies that the grain is already piled together, and therefore it comes to explain that if there's one place where we are to say that the Levi must take out two things, the Truma Gedoyla and the Trumas Meiser, then it's the specifically place where it's called a Dagon, where it's gathered together as a grain that was to be given to a Kohen as his Truma. Whereas the other case where it's not Dagon yet, then it suffices just to give the Trumas Meiser, even though it was skipped the Truma Gedoyla. The next on the list is Meiser Sheni vehekdesh shenifdu. Ask the Gemara again, Pshita, Hare, if indeed one was paid to the Meiser Sheni, then there's no longer kedusha on that grain. It's now was transferred to the kesef, and therefore the grain is now being able to eat by any chulin, by anybody else, Yisrael, a Levi, anybody who wants. Similarly, hekdesh, if you were paid the hekdesh, so again, it goes out to chulin. So why can you not use that? Why would we think you cannot use that grain for your matzah? The Mishnah has to tell us otherwise, that it's mutter to use. Answers the Gemara, hacha b'may askinon, shenosan es hakeren v'lonosan es hachomish. He was paid the meiser sheni and the hekdesh, by being paid and giving the keren, but he didn't add a chomesh, a fifth, which is normally the requirement. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is that that's going to still be valid. V'kamash malan dein chomesh ma'akev. The third on the list that you can use for your matzah is kohanim can use challah and truma. Ask the Gemara again, pshita. Why should you say that a kohen, who anyways is allowed to eat challah and truma, why could he not be able to use that for his matzah? Ma'ud the same, says the Gemara, you might have thought to say, matzah shaveh lekol adam. We require that matzah is only valid if it's shaveh lekol adam. That means everybody can partake in such matzahs. And therefore, when it comes to truma and challah, which only a kohen can partake in, maybe is not valid. Kamash malon matzos riba. Therefore, the psukim add the word matzos to tell you that there's a ribui to allow a kohen to indeed use challah and truma for his matzos. The Gemara then goes on to add in the Seifa of the Mishnah, the Mishnah goes on to add in the Seifa a list of things that you cannot use for your matzah. No, before that, I apologize. Before that, I made a mistake. The Mishnah goes on to say, yeah, indeed, the Seifa says in the Mishnah a list of things that you cannot use for your matzah. The first of them is tevel. Frek the Gemara pshita. That's straightforward. Tevel, of course, is off limits. One cannot use that in any case. Certainly can't use it for his matzah. Answers the Gemara, Lo tzricha betevel tavel midirabanon shezaro ba'ati sheno nokov. We're talking about tevel that is only tevel, which is tevel midirabanon. Why? It's a flower pot, but does not have holes, not perforated. Therefore, it doesn't get its sustenance from the ground, whereby midirabanon it's tevel, but midirais it's not. So we might think that over here it could still be valid for your mitzvah deraisa of ichilas matzah. Kamash malan, it's not. Then it states in the Mishnah, V'loi meiser rishon shelo not la trumasai, and also the meiser rishon, which sounds like it's talking to the Levi, who got his meiser rishon and did not take the trumas meiser to give to the kohen. Frek the Gemara pshita, certainly that's going to be invalid. He didn't give trumas meisers, it's tevel. Says Gemara lo tzricha shehigdimu bekri. We're talking about where, again, the scenario is that the Levi was given his meiser rishon after it was piled here. We're talking about after it was piled up and it was chayiv in trumas and meisers. He was giving the truma, the meiser rishon. That means the truma gedola was skipped. And now he's given Trumas, he's not given Meiser Rishon. And here it states that he did not give the Truma Gedoyla, it was skipped. So here the Lashon of the Mishnah really is a different type of Lashon. You have to read inside. Lo be Meiser Rishon, that the Levi got. Shelo not la Trumas, or refers to, he didn't take out, meaning to say, Truma Gedoyla. That's what we're talking about. And therefore, we're saying over here, that it's going to be therefore invalid. You can't use this for your matzah. Mao, this time you might think to say, just as Rav Papa was asking Abaye earlier, maybe over here in the scenario when it was already a kri, a pile, then it's valid if you skip the first stage and did not make a hafrosh of Truma Gedoyla. On that, he said, maybe that's what we're talking about, and it's the case of Shiboilim that you need to have the Levi take out both the Truma Gedoyla as well as the Trumas Meiser. Kamash Malon Kideshani Lei. Kamash Malon, like Abai explained to him, no, it says Dogon, Idgon. Dogon implies a pile of grain, whereby the pile of grain is what's chayiv, therefore, in Truma, whereby the Psukim that are talking about, you have to give both Trumos, the Trumas Meiser as well as Truma Gedoyla, is talking about that scenario where it's already a Kri. And over here, you do not give the Truma Gedoyla. The Gemara goes on to say, here you cannot go ahead and use Truma, Meiser Sheni and Hekdesh that you're not poideh. That cannot be used for your mitzvah of matzah. Ask the Gemara Pshita, again, that's straightforward. You're not poideh, your Meiser Sheni, your Hekdesh, certainly cannot use that for your matzah. It's kodesh, it's off limits. The Gemara says, no, la'olam de niftu, in truth, he did poideh. If he did poideh, then why does it say that he cannot use it for his matzah? Umay lo niftu, what does it mean he wasn't poideh? In the Mishnah means, shelo niftu kil hilchasan. He did not poideh kehalacha. Meiser Sheni niftu al gabe asimoin. He was poideh the Meiser Sheni onto a blank coin, an asimoin, instead of being poideh onto what's required, which is a madbeya with a tzura. He was poideh onto an asimoin. The Rachmona Omar v'tzarata hakesef. The davar sheyish bo tzura, something, a coin that has a tzura. That's what's required to be poideh onto. The hekdesh shechilu al gabe karka. And when it comes to hekdesh, he was poideh, but he was poideh onto karka. The Rachmon Omar v'nosan hakesef v'kamlo, referring to metaltlin. You can only be poideh hekdesh with metaltlin, with kesef, and not with karka. And therefore, these are two invalid types of pidyon, whereby you cannot use these grains for your matzah.